She uploaded a picture with her ex captioned, "Some stories never end." I replied in the comments, "Then mine just did," and walked away from everything that same night. "You really think I'd leave you for him?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words. I had too many. I just stood there, phone in hand, looking at the screen like it had personally decided to ruin my life. The picture was still up, her hand on his shoulder, his arm loose around her waist. Not stiff, not awkward, not the way you hold someone when a photo is forced. Comfortable, like muscle memory, like something that had never really stopped. And the caption, 3 words that felt less like nostalgia and more like a slow knife being pressed between my ribs. Some stories never end. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough that the screen dimmed on its own. Long enough that I had to press my thumb to wake it back up just to keep reading a caption I already had memorized. She was still talking. Behind me, her voice going calm and reasonable, the way it always did when she wanted me to feel like I was overreacting. I wasn't, but I hadn't said anything yet. I tapped the comment box, typed slowly, then mine just did. Posted it, put the phone face down on the counter, grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, and walked out. No argument, no slammed door, no dramatic speech, just gone. I didn't realize it then, not fully, but that comment was the last thing I ever said to her. Let me tell you what it took to get to that moment. Because it didn't start with a photo. It didn't start with him, or with her, or even with a lie I could name and point to. It started with a feeling. The kind you get when someone you love looks at you, and something in their eyes is somewhere else entirely. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 28. She was 26. We'd been together 3 years, 2 months, and somewhere around 11 days. Though I stopped counting after the first year because counting felt desperate and I was trying not to be that guy. Her name was Nora. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, a restaurant that was too loud and too expensive and too crowded, the kind of place where you have to lean in close just to hear someone speak. She leaned in. I leaned back, not out of disinterest, out of the fact that I didn't believe in anything that started too easily. She thought that was interesting. I thought it was just honest. Turns out, we were both wrong about each other in all the ways that seemed like they'd never matter. The first year was the kind of year you tell stories about. Road trips we planned on Tuesday and left for on Thursday. Cooking disasters at midnight that ended with cereal and laughing too hard. Long drives with no destination, just music and the kind of conversation that doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't need to. I fell in love with her the way you fall into deep water. Not suddenly, gradually, and then all at once. By the second year, things had settled. Not in the bad way, in the real way. The way where you stop performing and start existing. Where you leave the bathroom door open and they steal your hoodie and you stop saying goodnight like it means something because you know you'll see them in the morning. It was good, real and easy and good. But somewhere in the third year, something shifted. I couldn't name it. I tried. I turned it over in my head 100 times in the dark while she slept next to me, trying to identify the thing that felt different. She hadn't done anything wrong. Not yet. Not visibly. She was still there. Still laughing at my jokes. Still texting back. Still making plans. But there was a distance. A millimeter of space between her and everything she said, like she was reading lines she used to mean. I told myself I was tired. I told myself relationships had seasons. I told myself I was being paranoid because I had trust issues I'd never fully unpacked, and I knew it. I ignored the feeling. I was good at that. His name was Cole. She mentioned him once in the first year. My ex from before you. We're still friends. It was years ago. It's nothing. The way you mention a street you used to live on. Casually. Like it was just geography. I didn't push. I wasn't the jealous type. Or at least, I was committed to not being him. Cole existed in the background the way old exes sometimes do. A name on her contacts list. An occasional like on an Instagram post. A face I'd seen in old photos that she'd never deleted, which I noticed and didn't mention because mentioning it felt like proof of something I didn't want to be. He seemed fine, distant, historical. Then somewhere around month 28 of our relationship, he started commenting on her photos again. Not aggressively, not obviously, just consistently. Small things. Fire emoji. Always white heart. Classic you. The kind of comments that mean nothing when a stranger leaves them and mean everything when someone who used to know your body leaves them. She laughed it off when I brought it up. He's just like that with everyone. We're literally just friends. You're reading into things that aren't there. And maybe I was. I genuinely couldn't tell. That's the thing nobody tells you about this kind of situation. It's not always the lie that breaks you. Sometimes it's the uncertainty, the way you start auditing your own perception, the way you ask yourself if you're the problem so many times that you start believing you are. I backed off. I focused on us. I made reservations, planned things, showed up, did what you do when you're trying to outrun a feeling you can't name. She met me halfway. Things got better, or I thought they did. It was a Friday in late October when I noticed the first thing I should have asked about and didn't. We were supposed to have dinner. Nothing special, just our place, just cooking together, just the kind of evening that we used to have all the time before life got busy and evenings started needing to be scheduled. She texted at 5:30, running late, got held up, start without me. I didn't start without her. I waited, poured one glass of wine instead of two, stood by the window for a while, watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. She came home at 8, hair slightly different than when she'd left. Not messy, just reset, like someone who'd fixed themselves up before walking through a door. I noticed. I said nothing. She apologized for being late, kissed me on the cheek, went to change clothes, came back and ate the dinner I'd kept warm, and told me about a coworker drama I was barely listening to. I smiled. I nodded. I refilled my glass. And somewhere in the back of my mind, that small, specific detail locked itself away. Not accusation. Just noted. November came and went. Things were surface level fine. She had work stress. I had a project deadline that ate 3 weeks of my life. We existed in the same space and orbited each other the way busy people do. Parallel, not distant, but not quite overlapping either. There was a night, mid-November, when I woke up at 2 in the morning and she wasn't in bed. I lay there for a moment, listened, heard her in the living room, voice low, almost a murmur. I told myself it was a phone call she didn't want to wake me for. I rolled over, fell back asleep, decided I was not going to be the man who follows his girlfriend to a different room at 2 in the morning to check who she's talking to. I had too much respect for myself. Or maybe I was just afraid of what I'd find. I've thought about that moment a lot since. The version of me that stayed in bed. How differently things might have gone if I'd gotten up. December. Her office holiday party. She'd been going every year since before we met. Always a whole thing. Dress, shoes, the whole performance. This year she asked if I wanted to come. I said yes. She seemed mildly surprised. Not unhappy, just surprised. Like she'd expected me to say no. The party was at a bar downtown that had been rented out for the night. Warm lighting and too many people in ugly sweaters. The kind of corporate event that's tolerable only because there's open bar. I got drinks. Found a corner. Watched her work the room the way she always did. Effortlessly, laughing at the right moments, touching people's arms when she talked to them. The kind of social ease I'd always admired. Then I saw him. Cole. Standing near the far wall with a drink in his hand, talking to someone I didn't know. I stopped. Processed that. Cole worked with her? Or had been invited somehow. I wasn't sure which. She hadn't mentioned it. I watched him for a moment. He was taller than I'd imagined. Broader shoulders. The kind of face that photographs well and knows it. He laughed at something the person next to him said. And then he looked up, scanned the room, found her, and smiled. Not a hey, I know you smile. A there you are smile. The kind that has history in it. She was already walking toward him. And she hadn't looked for me once. I stood there with 2 drinks, one for me and one for her, and I watched them talk. She tilted her head the way she does when she's really engaged. He leaned in slightly. Not touching. Not obviously anything. Just close. Just comfortable. Just there. I walked over eventually. Introduced myself. He shook my hand firmly. Made good eye contact. Said something like, she talks about you. With a smile that I could not for the life of me read. She put her hand on my arm. Not possessively. More like reassurance. But I hadn't asked for any. We stayed another hour. Drove home mostly in silence. She said she was tired. I said me too. We went to bed. I stared at the ceiling. And I thought about the word there. There you are. I've never forgotten that smile. After the party, I didn't bring it up immediately. I sat with it for 3 days. Turned it over. Checked myself. Asked the questions I always asked when my gut was loud. Is this real, or is this fear? Is she doing something, or am I doing something to her? Am I about to blow up something real over a feeling I can't prove? On the 4th day, I said something. Gently. I told her I hadn't known Cole would be at the party. She blinked. Said she hadn't thought it was a big deal. Said he worked with a guy she was friends with, got invited through him. She'd seen his name on the list, and assumed I knew somehow. Assumed I knew? She looked at me calmly. I didn't think you'd care. I care that you didn't mention it. Why? So you could decide whether or not I should go. And there it was. The reframe. The quiet pivot from what I'd actually said to a version of it that made me sound controlling. I recognized it. I said, "That's not what I meant." She said, I know, I'm just tired." And the conversation ended before it started. That happened a lot. I want to be fair here, because I think about this often, the version of the story where I was wrong, where I was reading into things that weren't there, where my past made me see danger in shadows. I want to give that version room, because I'm not trying to paint her as a villain. I'm trying to tell you what happened, what I know happened, what I eventually couldn't explain away. January. New year, fresh start, all of that. We went to a cabin with 2 other couples for New Year's Eve. It was genuinely good. For days of cold air and board games and too much wine and the kind of easy laughter that reminded me why we worked. I watched her across a bonfire on the second night and thought, this is what I've been trying to hold on to. She caught me looking, smiled, came and sat next to me, leaned her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "You," I said. She squeezed my arm. "You're not as hard to love as you think you are," she said quietly. I didn't know what that meant, but it felt like the warmest thing anyone had ever said to me. I let myself believe we were okay. I think that was the last time I fully believed it. February. Valentine's Day. I did the whole thing. Booked a restaurant, flowers, the handwritten card I'd been drafting in my notes app since the week before because I wanted it to sound like me and not like a template. She loved it, or she seemed to. Dinner was good. Conversation was good. She laughed and held my hand across the table and looked at me the way she used to in the first year. We came home. She fell asleep early. I stayed up. Couldn't explain why. Just awake. I picked up her phone from the counter to check the time. Mine was dead and the charger was across the room. And her screen lit up. A notification. Instagram DM. "Cole, hope your night was everything. You deserve that." I put the phone down. Sat very still. Hope your night was everything. He knew about our plans. She'd told him about Valentine's Day. Specifically enough that he knew it was happening. Specifically enough that he messaged at the end of it. I sat there in the kitchen at midnight on Valentine's Day and felt something quietly collapse inside me. Not rage. Not tears. Just, oh, so this is what it is. I didn't confront her that night. I know that sounds weak. It wasn't weakness. It was the kind of composure that comes from knowing that if you speak right now, you will say things you can't unsay and make decisions you're not sure you've thought through. I waited. I thought. I paid attention in a way I hadn't let myself before. Because paying attention had felt like paranoia, and I was done gaslighting myself out of what my eyes were telling me. The next week, I noticed she'd started turning her phone face down when I was in the room. Not dramatically, just consistently. The week after, she mentioned his name twice in casual conversation. Once to say he'd given her a recommendation for a restaurant. Once to say he thought her work project was a great idea. "Cole thinks." Cole said. Cole recommended. He was woven into her daily thoughts in a way that hadn't been the case 6 months ago. Or maybe it had been and I just hadn't been paying attention. That thought, that maybe I'd missed the beginning, was the one that made me feel most sick. I want to tell you about the morning everything broke open. March. A Tuesday. She'd left early for work. Earlier than usual. I was still home, working from the living room, coffee in hand, laptop open. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I was not looking for anything. Her laptop was open on the coffee table from the night before. I reached over to close it, just to clear space, and the screen woke up. Her Instagram was open in the browser, and the DM thread with Cole was right there. Unminimized. I saw enough in 3 seconds before I looked away. Enough. One line from her. "Sometimes I wonder if we made the right call." His response. "I think about that more than I should." That was it. That was all I saw. I closed the laptop, stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, stood over the drain for a long time. Sometimes I wonder if we made the right call. 3 years. 3 years of showing up. 3 years of choosing her. 3 years of talking myself out of every instinct that told me something was wrong. And in a browser tab she'd left open on our coffee table, I found out that the whole time, she'd been wondering if she'd made the right call. I had 2 options. Blow it up immediately. Or wait, think, and do this the right way. I chose the second. Not because I was a coward. Because I was done making decisions from emotion. I'd watched my father do that his whole life. React, explode, regret. And I'd promised myself a long time ago that I would not be that. So I closed the laptop. Went to work. Came home. Was normal. Watched her make dinner. Watched her laugh at something on TV. Watched her reach over and squeeze my hand during a quiet moment. and I felt nothing go cold. Not from cruelty, from certainty. Because when you know something, truly know it, the feeling doesn't feel like fire anymore. It feels like silence. I didn't bring up what I'd seen. Not yet. I needed to decide what I was going to say, and how, and what outcome I was actually hoping for. Did I want to fix this? Could it be fixed? Was there anything left to fix? Or had I just been living inside a relationship that had quietly become a waiting room? I spent 3 nights thinking about that. Really thinking. Not with anger. With honesty. And what I came back to, every time, was this. I didn't want to be someone's backup plan. I didn't want to be chosen by default. I didn't want to be the man she stayed with because leaving felt complicated. If she loved me, not historically, not habituationally, not for the sake of what we'd built, but actually, presently, actively, then she would have to tell me that. I wasn't going to compete. I was not going to make a case for myself. I had too much dignity for that. I want to talk about the conversation we had the night before the photo, because people assume the comment was impulsive, that I saw the post and reacted from ego. It wasn't that. The night before, I sat her down. No dramatics. No printed screenshots. No accusations laid out like evidence in a trial. Just, I need us to be honest with each other. She looked at me. Something behind her eyes tightened. Okay, she said carefully. Do you still want this? She paused too long. Not long like she was thinking. Long like she was choosing. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I asked. Do you still want to be here? With me? Why are you asking me this? Because I need to know. Not an answer shaped around what you think I need to hear. A real answer. She looked at her hands. Took a breath. Things have just been complicated lately. Complicated how? I don't know. I've been in my head a lot. I've had a lot of feelings I haven't fully processed. About what? Silence. About who? I corrected. She looked up at me. I haven't done anything wrong, she said. I didn't say you did. Then why does this feel like an interrogation? And there was the reframe again. Patient as a river wearing down stone. It's not an interrogation, I said. I'm asking you a question because I love you and I deserve an honest answer. That's it. She said she needed time to think. She said things were complicated. She said she didn't want to lose what we had. And she did not say I love you and I want to be here. Not once. I heard what she didn't say more clearly than anything she did. I went to bed. She sat up in the living room. And in the morning, I woke up and she was gone early again. I made coffee, opened my phone, and there it was. Posted at 6:43 in the morning. A photo. Her and Qley, standing in front of what looked like a park, early morning light, her laughing, him with that same easy smile from the party. Taken that morning, while I was asleep. She'd slipped out of our apartment, met him in a park at dawn, and posted it before I'd even had my first cup of coffee. Some stories never end. I read it once, read it again, felt the silence that I'd talked about earlier, that cold, certain kind. Thought about the conversation last night. Thought about Valentine's Day. Thought about, sometimes I wonder if we made the right call. Thought about every moment I'd talked myself out of what I could feel. I tapped the comment box. Typed 6 words. Then mine just did. Posted. Put the phone face down. Grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. Walked out. I didn't have a plan. I had my wallet, my keys, my phone, and one shoe that I'd grabbed from near the door without fully checking if it matched. It did. Small mercies. I walked for a while. No destination. Just movement. The morning was cold and gray and quiet in that particular way cities get when it's early enough that the world hasn't committed to the day yet. I passed a coffee shop I'd never been to. Went in. Sat in the corner. Ordered something I didn't taste. Stared at the table for a long time. My phone started buzzing when I was halfway through the cup. Her. Calling. I watched it ring. Let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Then a text. Where are you? Then. What was that comment? Then. Can you please just talk to me? Then, after a long gap. I'm sorry. 2 words. No elaboration. No sorry for what. No, I should have been honest. Just I'm sorry. The kind of apology that doesn't want to name the thing it's apologizing for because naming it makes it real. I put the phone in my pocket. Finished the coffee. Paid. Left. My friend Ben called an hour later. Not because she'd contacted him. Just because he'd seen the comment. Half the people we knew had seen the comment. It had already gotten replies. Her friends had commented things like, oof, and you okay, girl? Someone I didn't know had screenshotted it. It was circulating. I didn't intend for it to be public. I hadn't thought about it being public. I just said what was true in the place where the lie had been posted. Ben asked if I was okay. I told him I didn't know yet. He said, where are you? I told him the neighborhood. He said, I'll come. He showed up 20 minutes later, sat across from me in the same coffee shop I hadn't left, ordered something, and didn't say anything for a while. That's the thing about the right kind of people. They know when presence is more useful than words. Eventually he said, "How long did you know? Know or suspect?" "Either. Suspected for months. Knew for certain. 3 days." He nodded slowly. "Are you sure nothing happened?" he asked carefully. "Like physically?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't think so. But I don't know. Does it change things for you? Whether something did or didn't?" I thought about that. "No," I said. "Not really. Because it didn't. The emotional betrayal was complete. The deception was complete. Whether or not there was a physical line crossed. The intent was there. The secrecy was there. The "some stories never end" posted at 6:43 in the morning after meeting him in a park while I was asleep in our bed, that was there. The rest was just detail. She came to Ben's place that evening. She'd texted me that she was outside. I went down alone. She was standing on the sidewalk in the same coat she'd been wearing in the photo. I noticed that. She hadn't gone home to change. Or she had, and this was what she put on. Either way, her eyes were red. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. Part of me felt something at that. Not weakness. Just the recognition that grief doesn't automatically mean wrongness. You can hurt someone and still feel pain about it. Those things coexist. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Yes." We stood there on the sidewalk. She didn't suggest going inside. I didn't either. "I didn't cheat on you," she said. "Okay. I need you to hear me say that. I heard you. The photo was stupid. The caption was stupid. I posted it without thinking, and then I realized how it looked, and I tried to. You tried to call me," I said. "I know. I saw. I'm sorry. I am really sorry." "What are you sorry for?" I asked. She blinked. "For the photo. For making you feel like. What are you actually sorry for?" I asked again. Her mouth closed. Opened. Closed. "Tell me what you're sorry for," I said quietly. "Specifically. Because I'm sorry doesn't mean anything unless I know what it's attached to." She looked at the ground. "I've been confused," she said finally. "About Cole." It wasn't a question. She didn't deny it. "It's not what you think," she said. "It's not. We're not. I don't have feelings for him." "Then why were you wondering if you'd made the right call?" I asked. She went completely still. The color changed in her face. She knew what that meant. She knew I'd seen. "I wasn't," she started. "Don't," I said. Not harshly. "Just don't." She stopped. We stood there in the cold for a moment. "I need you to be honest with me right now," I said. "Not protective. Not careful. Just honest. Do you still love me the way this needs someone to love someone? Or has it been something else for a while?" The silence that followed lasted long enough that I got my answer before she opened her mouth. "I do love you," she said. "That's not what I asked." A tear ran down her face. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what I feel. I've been so confused, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it because I didn't want to hurt you. But you were okay with hurting me privately," I said. "Just not openly." She shook her head. "That's not fair." "Maybe not," I said. "But it's accurate." She reached out and touched my arm. "Please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You did something. And now I'm just responding to it honestly, which is all I've ever asked you to do." She was crying openly now, and I felt it. I'm not a stone, I felt it. 3 years of mornings. 3 years of the person I'd loved in the way that quietly reorganizes you. Standing on a sidewalk, asking me not to go. And I knew, with the clarity that only comes when you've already made peace with something, that love is not the same thing as right. You can love someone and still know that staying is the wrong choice. You can grieve something that still exists. That's the part nobody teaches you. "I think I need to know about Cole," I said. "All of it. Not what you think I can handle. All of it." She wiped her eyes. "There's nothing to tell." "There's something," I said. "We talked. A lot. Over the last few months." She exhaled. "When things felt hard between us, he was easy to talk to. He always has been. And you told him about us. About our problems. Some things, yes. And Valentine's Day." She flinched. "Didn't deny it. And you met him this morning. It was just coffee. At a park. Before 7 in the morning. After a conversation with me the night before where I asked you directly if you still wanted to be here." She didn't have an answer for that. Not a real one. Because there wasn't one. There was no version of "I was out meeting my ex at dawn" that exists alongside "I'm fully committed to the person asleep in our bed." Those two things cannot share a sentence. We talked for another hour. Out there on that sidewalk. Cold as it was. She told me things I'd suspected and things I hadn't. She told me she'd been comparing. Not consciously. Or at least, that's what she said. But she'd been measuring what we had against what she remembered having with him. She said she hadn't acted on anything. She said she hadn't kissed him. She said she didn't plan to leave me for him. She said all the technically exonerating things. And I believed her. I actually believed her. Not that she was innocent, but that she genuinely hadn't thought of it as betrayal while it was happening. That's the most dangerous kind of person to love. Not the one who knows they're hurting you and does it anyway. The one who convinces themselves they're not doing anything wrong while doing everything wrong. Who tells themselves it's just talking right up until the moment the person they were just talking to is captioned in their Instagram post as a story that never ends. I believed her, and it didn't change a single thing. "What do you want?" she asked me eventually. Not desperately, genuinely, like she was preparing herself for the answer. I thought about it for a real moment, not for effect, because the question deserved honesty. "I want to have been wrong," I said. "About what?" "About the way this feels," I said. "I've spent months telling myself I was wrong, that I was paranoid, that I was projecting. I wanted to be wrong more than I've wanted almost anything. And I wasn't." She looked at me. "So what does that mean?" "It means I can't stay here," I said. She closed her eyes. "Please." "Not because I stopped loving you," I said. "Because I love myself enough not to spend another year being someone's almost." "You're not." "I am," I said gently. "And you know it. I think you've known it for a while." She didn't argue. That was the hardest part. The absence of argument. If she'd fought it, pushed back, said that's not true with conviction, maybe I would have wavered. But she didn't. She just stood there. And her silence confirmed everything her words couldn't. I went back to the apartment the next afternoon. She wasn't there. I didn't know if she'd arranged that on purpose or if it was coincidence. Either way, I was grateful. I packed what mattered. Not everything. Just the things that were mine in a way that wasn't tangled up with us. My books. The leather jacket I'd had since college. The photograph of my grandfather I kept on the dresser. A few practical things. I left the rest. Not out of generosity, because some things belong to the version of you that no longer exists. And taking them feels like lying about who you're about to become. I texted her when I was done. "I took what I need. Everything else is yours. I hope you find clarity. I genuinely mean that." She replied an hour later. "I'm sorry I wasn't braver." I read it. Thought about it. Didn't respond. Put my phone in my pocket. Picked up my bag. Walked out of the apartment for the second time that weekend. The first time I'd walked out in anger. This time in something that wasn't anger at all. Closer to relief. The particular, exhausted relief of a man who has finally stopped pretending. People asked me later if I regretted the comment. The public one. Then mine just did. Honestly, no. Not because I wanted to embarrass her. Not because I'm proud of settling things in a comment section. But because it was the truest thing I could have said. She'd posted something public that made a statement about her life. About a story she was still choosing. And I responded publicly with a statement about mine. There's a certain kind of honesty in that. The kind that doesn't negotiate. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that says, "I see what this is, and this is what I choose." Some people thought I was being petty. A few friends reached out to say I'd embarrassed myself. One of her friends texted me, from a number I'd never saved, to tell me I was immature and dramatic. I read it, smiled a little, deleted it. Because the thing about people who call your honesty dramatic is that they usually benefit from your silence. I was done being silent. Here's what the months after looked like. Not romantically, not cinematically, just honestly. The first 2 weeks were the hardest. Not because I missed her specifically, though I did, but because the absence of a person you've built your daily rhythms around is its own kind of disorientation. You reach for your phone to tell them something. You cook too much food. You wake up and for 1 second you forget, and then you remember, and that second of forgetting is the worst part of every morning. But it got lighter. Not quickly, but steadily. I started running. Not for the metaphor. Just because I needed somewhere to put the energy that used to go into worrying. I spent more time with Ben. With a couple of other friends I'd neglected because relationships have a way of quietly absorbing your entire social calendar. I worked more. Not as avoidance. As purpose. I had a project I'd been half-hearted about for months that I suddenly had the bandwidth to care about. I cared about it. I got good at it. Things moved. I heard through mutual circles that Cole and Nora were seeing each other about 2 months after we ended. I want to tell you, I didn't feel anything when I heard that. I did. I felt the particular bitterness that comes with confirmation, the of course of it all. But underneath the bitterness was something else. Completion. Because I'd known. Not in the accusatory way. In the deep gut, intuitive. I know what this is way that I'd been silencing for months. And being right, even about a painful thing, has its own strange peace. It means you're not crazy. It means your instincts work. It means you can trust yourself again. That trust, I found, was worth more than almost anything else I walked away with. A few months later, a friend asked me what I'd learned. Not in a lecture way, genuinely. The way a person asks when they're going through something themselves and looking for a flashlight, not a map. I thought about it for a while before answering. I learned that people will almost never lie to you directly, I said. They'll just stop being fully honest. And there's a gap between those two things that you can live in for a very long time if you're willing to. And, she asked. And I'm not willing to, I said. Was it worth it? She asked. Walking away like that. I thought about the sidewalk. The cold. Her eyes. 3 years folded into a conversation that lasted an hour. Yeah, I said. Even though it hurt. Especially because it hurt, I said. Pain that comes from honesty is at least clean. Pain that comes from pretending is just rot. She nodded slowly. Didn't say anything. Ordered another drink. I think she understood. The thing I want to say, the thing I've turned over the most since all of this, is about certainty. Not the certainty of knowing what someone did. The certainty of knowing what you won't accept. Because here's the truth. I could have stayed. I want to be honest about that. I could have taken the apology. Believed that nothing happened. Accepted I was confused as explanation enough. Rebuilt. Plenty of people do. Plenty of people stay in things that have been cracked and sand down the edges and tell themselves the structure still holds. And maybe it does. Maybe for some people, rebuilding is the right thing. I don't judge that. But I know myself well enough to know that I could not have rebuilt on that foundation. Not because the crack was too wide. Because I would have thought about it every time she picked up her phone. Every time she laughed at a text. Every time she left the house early. Every time she met my eyes and smiled. I would have been watching. And the man I want to be does not live like that. He does not audit the person he loves. He does not earn his own peace of mind. He is either trusted or he is gone. There's no middle ground I'm interested in. Some months later, I was back in the city. Different neighborhood than where we'd lived. New rhythm, new mornings, new version of ordinary. I was sitting outside a cafe on a Saturday, doing nothing. Just existing in the day the way you can when nothing urgent is pulling at you. My phone was on the table, face up, for no particular reason. And a notification came in, Instagram, an account I'd forgotten I followed, posting a story. I glanced at it, didn't open it, put the phone back down, and I realized, sitting there in the cool morning air with my coffee, I hadn't thought about her in 4 days. For days, which doesn't sound like much. But 6 months ago, there wasn't an hour that passed without her name somewhere in the background noise of my mind. And now, for days. Clean, quiet, unannounced 4 days. I sat with that for a while. Let it mean what it meant. Not celebration. Not victory. Just evidence. Evidence that you do, eventually, become someone whose life is wider than the wound. I don't have a neat conclusion for you. Love is not a lesson. Grief is not a curriculum. People are not cautionary tales or redemption arcs. She was real. What we had was real. What she did was real. What I walked away from was real. And what I found on the other side of it was just myself, standing in it, quieter than before, more honest, less willing to talk myself out of what I know. Some people call that growth. I just call it the result of going through something and not looking away. I typed 6 words into a comment box, posted them, put the phone down, and the life I built after that was the first one I chose completely for myself.